Have you ever noticed how your worst enemy isn't the person beside you, but the voice inside your head? That relentless critic that whispers, "You're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough." Today we're going to explore 8 powerful Stoic principles that will teach you how to silence that inner voice and finally break free from the mental chains that have been holding you back. These aren't just philosophical concepts from ancient Rome. These are practical, life-changing tools that you can start using immediately to transform your relationship with yourself. By the end of this exploration, you'll understand why Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, still struggled with his own inner critic, and more importantly, how he overcame it. If this is your first time encountering Stoic wisdom, I encourage you to stay until the end, where you'll discover invaluable lessons that can strengthen your mental resilience against any challenge life throws at you. Remember, you are stronger than you think and more capable than you imagine. Don't let the opinions and judgments of others, including your own inner critic, cloud your vision of yourself. The prison of your own making. Before we dive into the 8 principles that will set you free, let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates the power of the inner critic. In a small coastal village lived a young fisherman named Thomas. He was known for his exceptional skill in navigating turbulent waters and his incredible ability to fish during the most challenging days. However, over the years, Thomas had accumulated not just broken nets and tools, but also a collection of harsh self-criticisms that he carried everywhere. Every morning, before setting sail, he would hear that familiar voice, "You're not as good as your father was. You'll never amount to anything. Today will be another failure." These thoughts weighed him down more than any physical cargo ever could. One stormy morning, as he prepared for a long journey at sea, Thomas realized that his biggest enemy wasn't the unpredictable ocean. It was the relentless storm of self-doubt in his mind. Just like Thomas, we often carry invisible cargo that makes navigating life's challenges infinitely more difficult. The good news? Unlike external storms, this is one tempest we have complete control over. Principle 1. Recognize what is and isn't under your control. The foundation of Stoic philosophy, and the first step to silencing your inner critic, lies in understanding the fundamental distinction between what you can and cannot control. Your inner critic loves to torment you about things completely outside your influence. What others think, past mistakes, future uncertainties. Marcus Aurelius, in his personal journal that we now know as Meditations, constantly reminded himself of this principle. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Emperor of Rome, with all his power, still needed these daily reminders because the human mind naturally gravitates toward worry about the uncontrollable. When your inner critic starts its familiar chorus of, "What if they think I'm stupid?" or "I should have done better," pause and ask yourself, is this something I can actually control right now? If the answer is no, then you're wasting precious mental energy that could be directed towards something productive. Practice this simple exercise. Every time you catch your mind spiraling into self-criticism, immediately identify whether the concern is within your sphere of control. If it isn't, consciously redirect your attention to something that is: your next action, your breathing, your posture. This isn't about suppressing thoughts. It's about choosing where to invest your mental resources. Principle 2. Treat yourself as you would a good friend. Your inner critic operates with a double standard that would be immediately obvious if applied to anyone else. Imagine speaking to your best friend the way your inner voice speaks to you. Would you tell them they're worthless after a mistake? Would you constantly remind them of their past failures? Of course not. So why do you accept this treatment from yourself? The Stoics understood the importance of rational self-compassion. This doesn't mean making excuses for poor behavior or avoiding responsibility. Instead, it means treating yourself with the same fairness and understanding you'd offer to someone you care about. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about the futility of harsh self-judgment. He recognized that excessive self-criticism doesn't motivate improvement. It paralyzes action and breeds resentment. When you speak to yourself with kindness while maintaining high standards, you create an environment where growth can actually occur. Next time your inner critic launches into its familiar attack, consciously shift the tone. Instead of, "I'm such an idiot for making that mistake," try, "That didn't go as planned, but what can I learn from this experience?" This simple reframing transforms destructive criticism into constructive feedback. Principle 3. Question your assumptions. Your inner critic operates on a foundation of assumptions that you've never actually examined. It tells you that making mistakes is catastrophic, that others are constantly judging you, that you must be perfect to be worthy of respect. But how many of these beliefs have you actually tested? The Stoics were masters of rational examination. They constantly questioned their initial impressions and emotional reactions, understanding that our first thoughts are often colored by fear, past experiences, and social conditioning rather than current reality. Epictetus taught his students to examine their judgments about external events. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This principle applies powerfully to your relationship with your inner critic. The critic isn't the problem. It's your unquestioned acceptance of its harsh judgments. Create a mental habit of challenging your inner critic's assertions. When it says, "Everyone thinks you're incompetent," ask for evidence. When it claims, "You always mess things up," examine whether this is actually true or just a distorted perception based on a few memorable incidents. Most of the time, you'll find that your inner critic is operating on outdated information and irrational fears. Principle 4. Focus on progress, not perfection. One of the inner critic's favorite weapons is perfectionism, the impossible standard that sets you up for constant failure and self-recrimination. The Stoics had a much healthier approach. They focused on making progress within their sphere of control, while accepting that perfection is neither achievable nor necessary. Marcus Aurelius didn't expect himself to be a perfect emperor, father, or philosopher. Instead, he focused on acting with virtue and wisdom in each moment, understanding that growth comes through consistent effort, not flawless execution. His meditations are full of reminders to himself about the importance of persistence, despite setbacks, and the futility of expecting perfection from himself or others. When your inner critic berates you for not being further along in your goals or for making mistakes, remind yourself that progress is the only meaningful measure. Every day you choose courage over comfort, wisdom over impulse, or kindness over indifference. You're making progress regardless of the outcome. Celebrate small victories and learn from setbacks without attaching your self-worth to either. The Stoics understood that external results are influenced by many factors beyond our control, but our effort and intention remain ours to command. This perspective transforms failures from sources of shame into opportunities for learning and growth. Principle 5. Practice negative visualization. This might sound counterintuitive when dealing with an overly critical inner voice, but negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum as the Stoics called it, can actually reduce the power of your inner critic by removing the element of surprise from potential setbacks. The key difference between destructive worry and Stoic negative visualization is purpose and control. Your inner critic uses imagined disasters to paralyze you with fear. Stoic negative visualization, on the other hand, helps you prepare mentally for challenges while appreciating what you currently have. Seneca regularly practiced imagining loss, not to torture himself, but to reduce attachment to outcomes and build resilience. When you've mentally rehearsed handling failure, criticism, or setbacks, they lose much of their power to trigger your inner critic's harsh commentary. Try this practice. Spend a few minutes each week imagining facing a setback or criticism related to something important to you. Visualize yourself responding with dignity, learning from the experience, and continuing forward. This mental rehearsal builds confidence and reduces the fear that feeds your inner critic. Principle 6. Reframe criticism as information. Your inner critic often amplifies and distorts legitimate feedback, turning helpful observations into character assassinations. Learning to separate useful information from destructive commentary is essential for mental freedom. The Stoics valued honest feedback and self-examination, but they approached it with rational detachment rather than emotional reactivity. When Cato received criticism, he would examine it for truth without allowing it to shake his fundamental sense of self-worth. He understood that external feedback could inform his actions without defining his character. When your inner critic starts its familiar refrain, practice extracting any useful information while discarding the emotional poison. If the message is "you're terrible at public speaking," translate it to "this is an area where I can improve." If it's "you always disappoint people," reframe it as "I want to be more reliable in my commitments." This practice separates actionable insights from destructive self-talk. You can address areas for improvement without accepting the inner critic's harsh judgments about your worth as a person. Remember, you are not your mistakes, your shortcomings, or your current limitations. You are someone capable of growth and change. Principle 7. Cultivate present moment awareness. Your inner critic thrives on regrets about the past and anxieties about the future. It rarely operates in the present moment because the present is where your actual power resides. The Stoics understood this deeply, which is why they emphasized the importance of present moment awareness and action. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to focus on the current task at hand rather than getting lost in regrets or worries. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." This wasn't about avoiding planning for the future or learning from the past, but about not allowing past mistakes or future fears to rob the present moment of its power and peace. When you notice your inner critic pulling you into stories about past failures or future disasters, gently bring your attention back to what you can do right now. What action can you take in this moment? What choice do you face right now? What can you appreciate about your current situation? Developing this habit of present moment awareness gradually weakens the inner critic's grip on your mind. The critic feeds on abstract fears and regrets, but it struggles to maintain its power when you're fully engaged with immediate, concrete reality. Principle 8. Remember your mortality. This final principle might seem morbid, but the Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering death, can be powerfully liberating when dealing with an overly critical inner voice. When you truly internalize the temporary nature of your existence, many of the things your inner critic obsesses about reveal themselves as trivial. Marcus Aurelius regularly contemplated the transient nature of life, not to become depressed, but to gain perspective on what truly matters. He realized that in the grand scope of existence, most of our daily anxieties and self-criticisms are insignificant. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of living well. It clarifies what living well actually means. When your inner critic is berating you about an embarrassing moment, a professional setback, or a social awkwardness, ask yourself, will this matter on my deathbed? More often than not, the answer is no. This isn't about becoming indifferent to your life. It's about saving your emotional energy for things that truly deserve it. Use this perspective to prioritize courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, and growth over safety. When you truly understand that your time is limited, you become less willing to waste it listening to destructive internal commentary. You become more focused on living according to your values rather than the arbitrary standards your inner critic has constructed the path forward implementing. These 8 Stoic principles isn't about achieving a state where your inner critic never speaks. That voice will likely always exist to some degree. Instead, it's about changing your relationship with that voice, reducing its power and refusing to let it control your actions and emotions. Like Thomas, the fisherman in our story, you have the power to recognize what cargo you're carrying and choose what to release. The storms of life will continue, but you can navigate them with much greater ease when you're not weighed down by unnecessary mental baggage. Start small. Choose one principle that resonates most strongly with you and practice it consistently for a week. Notice how it affects your internal dialogue and your daily experience. Then gradually incorporate the other principles, building a robust mental framework that can withstand whatever challenges life presents. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all self-reflection or healthy self-criticism. These can be valuable tools for growth. The goal is to distinguish between constructive self-evaluation and destructive self-attack, choosing wisdom over worry, and progress over perfection. Conclusion: the ancient Stoics faced the same internal struggles we face today. Doubt, fear, harsh self-judgment, and the constant pressure to meet impossible standards. What made them different wasn't the absence of these challenges, but their approach to handling them with wisdom, courage, and practical philosophy. Your inner critic doesn't have to be your master. With these 8 principles as your guide, you can transform that harsh voice into a more balanced, supportive internal dialogue. You can break free from the mental chains that have been limiting your potential and step into a more confident, resilient version of yourself. The journey begins with a single choice: the choice to question that critical voice, to treat yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a friend, and to focus on what you can actually control. As Marcus Aurelius knew well, you have power over your mind, and when you realize this truth fully, you will find a strength that no external circumstance can shake. Start today. Start now. Your future self will thank you for taking the first step toward mental freedom.